Dynamo and Clarendon Partners have come together to provide an educational series around best practices and successful strategies to follow throughout your post-implementation journey with FinTech. Clarendon Partners is a boutique woman-owned consultancy and helps you engineer your organization's DNA to prepare for a more efficient, brighter, and agile future. We're pleased to welcome you to the second session of this three-part series, Tortoise versus the Hare, How to Ensure Success with Your Implementation Timeline. In the first segment, Rob Fox, Senior Manager at Clarendon Partners, will share key essentials for moving to a new system. Rob's segment will be followed by a dual interview with Mike Parrinello, who serves as director also at Clarendon, and Michelle O'Connell, Dynamo's global head of implementation. Both Mike and Michelle will discuss the pitfalls firms should avoid and how to best unlock the keys to a successful implementation. Now let's get started. Rob is going to kick things off for us. Rob, what are the critical foundational areas that typically get left behind when moving to a new system?
When teams are moving to a new system, some critical things can be left behind, often due to timeline pressures or resource or cost pressures. And when teams don't have enough time or capacity, they'll often leave behind critical work, work that really sets you up for success after go live. These are often foundational elements for any successful and stable business operation. Things like process flows, standard operating procedures, a reports inventory that includes how and by whom all those reports are produced and for whom. Implementing a new system is certainly going to impact these core foundational elements, and leaving behind the change of those or documentation of any new operating procedures that are required in future state is going to leave the team post go live in a place where it can't be stable, doesn't have the foundational documentation, training, and other things to be able to successfully move forward.
Let's now move over to Mike and Michelle to get their perspective on things. What strategies can clients engage in to help ensure success?
Some of the ways that we see that where clients can help ensure implementation success include having a very detailed milestone plan and having open and transparent communication about that plan, with a very important focus on users and ultimately their participation as it increases throughout the implementation. So frequently, users, they may be informed for a bit of the implementation, but before they have to go start using the system, they need to be trained. They need to be aware of their roles and responsibilities in the implementation and in the go live and kind of success criteria. So ensuring that owners or sponsors of the implementation understand that prior to going live, they need to confirm data, validate data, and agree on a timeline with the vendor in order to go live. What their role is in that is critical.
Absolutely, Mike. I agree completely with everything you're saying. Planning is such an important part of the project management process, and really making sure that those milestones are carefully planned out is a key to success. For example, it's important to make sure that they're realistic. Many times when people are planning projects, they tend to be very optimistic and assume that things will always go right 100% of the time. People are out sick, they're on leave, or there may be holidays, things like that. It's important to be conservative when planning milestones so that those milestone dates are realistic. And also to make sure that the milestones are broken out. And oftentimes you see a project approached with a broad series of work, and it might take 3, 6, 9, 12 months to complete. By breaking it down into smaller pieces, it's much more manageable. The team can celebrate wins along the way, and the change organizationally is easier to adopt because it's smaller and less disruptive. And then lastly, I agree completely around defining objectively how to transition into and out of those milestones. It's easy to say, let's start parallel processing because it's our date to start that parallel test period, but perhaps we're not ready for it. Perhaps our data hasn't been fully reviewed because maybe someone's been pulled into a different priority or something to do with their day job. So make sure that you have objective criteria defined to really kind of define how you move into and out of those milestones, so that it's when you get to that point, it's not an emotional decision, it's a very objective decision.
How can a firm get your employees invested or feeling like they've had a part of this?
In terms of managing successful implementations, communication is a key part of the overall strategy. Communication and governance practices really need to be established at the start of a project. Who needs to be informed? Who is the day-to-day team? And what are the governance plans to keep those other stakeholders included? For example, you may have a day-to-day project team that's very deeply embedded in the issues, the progress, and the tasks. You may want to have some kind of a regular update to your executive team members. Typically, when we run status meetings at Dynamo, we try to keep those meetings as small as possible so that we can really be deeply embedded in those discussions. And then we have regular communication with executives outside of that, either in a steering committee format or some kind of an email update. We find that those are really effective when they're handled really efficiently. Executives have very challenging schedules to work with. So 15 minutes, a half an hour, once a month is about the right frequency. And the goal there is to really prepare materials ahead of that call so they can read the status ahead very quickly, one slide, just with very kind of symbolic summary level information, and then use that meeting to just discuss risks, challenges, things like that, so that you're not using the meeting just to present the status. You're actually coming prepared to go over what you need their input, buy-in, or help with, and that's a better use of their time, and we find we get better engagement that way. In terms of additional business groups and other stakeholder groups, it's adoption so important, and planning for that early with communication and governance will certainly help. For example, getting perhaps one person from related business teams who can be kind of an evangelist, who can be part of the project, be aware of the decision, and help to bring their team on board, rather than having a project team that they may not work regularly with kind of tell them what to do. It just gets that buy-in kind of further ahead in the process.
Yeah, no, great points, Michelle. And in terms of communication, especially to stakeholders, employees, users of the system, and consumers of the data that comes out of the new system, making sure they understand what will be different. So in terms of communication, first of all, Michelle, I know you know that reporting is always somewhat of an afterthought, thought of late in the process, or at least people pay attention to it late in the process. And communicating exactly what will be different to users is critical, so that you can avoid, in some cases, even just the perception of errors or problems with the system, right? So we've all been there where you go live, client says, hey, I looked at the data, you told me to go to report B. I looked at report B and the data's all wrong. But it's actually because they weren't trained properly on how to understand the data. And then, of course, a month later, they say, oh, no, it was actually all correct, and we love the new reporting and everything else. But instantly, you can kind of avoid some bad PR of stakeholders just, kind of vocally denouncing the new system and things like that. So communication on reporting is very, very key, and completely agree on having someone on the team, even if you think about it from an implementation team perspective. If you can find your internal, even if they're not officially sanctioned, champions that understand and can buy in and can be the ones to also message the benefits of the system and help coach or explain those to others, to either resistors or maybe even people that are just not as actively participating as they should be, because they can, clients can frequently be more receptive to someone internal than the external software team or consulting team that might be helping them. So figuring out all the dynamics of how those teams work together, and then being able to convince others to behave in certain ways. That's all part of how you kind of successfully implement.
Thank you to all of our speakers, Rob, Mike, and Michelle, and to Clarendon Partners for collaborating with Dynamo on this important first series. Stay tuned as part 3 will focus on the final countdown. Ready, set, launch. But wait,